And I'm not just talking about options in the sense of like, oh, you can get this and then you can add on this and then you can add on this. No. I'm talking about increasing options with value, because you want to desire the client to move up to that higher value. That because you know that you're an expert, you're the expert, you know what is going to be most valuable to them. And so it's not just about like having more deliverables between three options. It's about showcasing that value.
Welcome to Inspiration Contagion, where we spread inspiration one story at a time. I am your host, Holly Jean Jackson. Each interview spotlights transformational business leaders, their stories, challenges, and advice for how you too can lead yourself and others through inspiration. Learn how you too can achieve peak performance, build more revenue, and lead the legacy you were meant to lead. Welcome back to episode 107 of Inspiration Contagion. Still pinching myself, still getting goosebumps that we're past 100 episodes. Incredible wild ride. Today, I have with me Trey Bowden. He is the Chief of Awesome at Roar. Trey is a husband, father, and guitar collector. Never imagined he would be an entrepreneur. I don't think many of us do. It just kind of happens. It bites us or happens. And his personal mission is to encourage others to become all who God created them to be. With that, welcome, Trey.
By the way, I did not give myself that title. So just so you know, that title was given to me by an old friend. She was actually a former teacher of mine in high school. And then I went to go work with her at the school I worked at for 10 years. And she was like, you know what? I think your title should be Chief of Awesome. And they would always introduce me that way. And people would think it's such a cool title. And I was like, I feel like such a dummy. But at the same time, it's stuck. And so people, that's what I usually introduce myself as.
It's like a nickname title. I love it.
Yeah.
My nickname's Jetpack. I don't think that applies to my work, but
what is that about? Why Jetpack?
So a really good friend of mine who's also very technical. This is back when I worked in corporate. We were doing an update on, I think, WordPress for Yin and Yummy. It was a kind of side recipe project that we did for fun that did not succeed. Otherwise, it would still exist. And we were doing a plugin update that was called Jetpack. And he's super technical, and I was not as technical, and I was able to figure it out. And we were also on a cycling team together, and I was super competitive, and I'd be like, I'm going to beat you to the top. And so he's like, your nickname is officially Jetpack. And it stuck because people always tell me cool my jets because I go so fast and I do so many things. And so Jetpack just kind of stuck after that.
Wow. Do you still cycle?
Not as much. So I moved back to North Carolina 4 years ago, and road cycling here, there's just not a lot of safety factors on the road.
Sure.
Versus California, it was a lot safer. So now my new obsession is rock climbing instead of cycling.
Yeah, my wife and I used to do cycling. We used to do 100-mile century rides for juvenile diabetes research. And we did it like 5 years in a row. I loved cycling so much, but we've moved now closer to the city. I'm here in Atlanta, and it doesn't feel as safe to ride around here. And also the kid factor, having 3 boys. It's when do you have time to cycle that far?
Yeah, I will say I miss cycling, but oh my goodness, the 75 plus mile rides, my body doesn't necessarily miss. So no. Total tangent for our listeners, but we're going to kind of segue from Chief of Awesome and cycling and doing 100-mile rides into what makes you an inspirational leader, or what would you say is your secret sauce?
The secret sauce angle is interesting. Mainly just because I think that sometimes it just kind of feels like I don't want, how do I even talk about my own secret sauce, right? Like, I feel part of our values as a company is humility is one of those things, and something that I think oftentimes in creative worlds, because of what we do is we create things that are images of sorts, and I don't know, I think that sometimes like there's just humility is something that I feel like is lacking in our industry sometimes. So even to ask what my secret sauce is interesting. But for me, honestly, when I think about what is the secret sauce that I think I bring into our team and business, is one, I genuinely care more about my team members that that work with me to succeed more than I do even like the business to succeed. I know that I really care deeply about seeing our group of people that are, we call them the main gang in our place, but to see them thrive as creatives and to be better as they go along that sort of journey. But then I think the other thing is just around positivity. Positivity has always been, when I did Strengths Finder, I don't know if you're familiar with that type of test, like positivity for me has always been something that has been super high on all of those types of tests. And because of that, I don't know, I just try and make an atmosphere to be fun, exciting, full of energy. And I think that that's a lot of the secret sauce that we bring to the table.
Yeah. I mean, my goodness, you look at the news or social media and a lot of the posts, especially leading up to this time of the year, we won't even digress into politics, can be very fear laden and very compare and despair, not a lot of positivity across the board. So it's really important to inject that high energy, high vibe, really safe container for your employees as well as your clients. People need that breathing space. That's why I created Inspiration Contagion. Was it was the beginning of the pandemic. There's a lot of fear, a lot of separation, and I wanted people to have light and hope and glimmer and inspiration instead of fear and sadness and darkness. So I think that's incredible, incredible secret sauce alongside humility. It's one thing to, I like toting our clients' success, right? And not because
Sure,
of how
definitely.
we've made them successful, but because we, just like you said, you care more about your employees' success as individuals. When we partner with our clients, we care and we truly partner with them in their success. It's not just about what package they bought. It's even between the hours of delivery of the package. If we have a solution we come up with, and in the midst of that, great, that's amazing. And it's helping them shine brighter. So I think that's incredible and so important to have that humility and that spark. I do want to ask you, Trey, given what you shared with the secret sauce and given the positivity vibe, how would you define inspiration and what does it mean to you today?
So Elizabeth Gilbert, I love Elizabeth Gilbert.
Same.
She's I think that she's a great example of, I think, a modern day like guru creative, and she creates a lot of like I go back to one of her TED Talks that she talks about. It was right after she wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and she was talking about her muse, and she wasn't necessarily talking about necessarily in a spiritual way, but I thought it was really interesting is that she shows up every day to write, and her muse will either be here or it won't. And she talks about it almost like trying to catch the wind, right? And she has this one part where she's like coming out onto the outside of a house, and she yells at the wind. She's like, "I'm here. Where are you?" And so inspiration to me, honestly, it's more intangible than anything. I think that it lies somewhere in this idea of intersection of purpose, right? And just our life moments. And I think that a lot of times what inspires me the most is when I see people living out, or I see effects of genuine purpose being on display in moments of like whether it be hardship or moments in great joy. Like I just think that is inspiration to me. And again, I think that comes back to another thing that's true of our company. So our company is called Roar. It's named, all of my sons have names named after Aslan the lion. And so when I went into this business. I was like, well, I might as well just adopt our spirit animal here. And so when you first see Aslan come out to in The Magician's Nephew, which is the first book of the trilogy, not the trilogy, but the Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe series, or Chronicles of Narnia, that's what I'm going to say. He comes out and he sings creation into existence. And the planet of Narnia was just blank. And to me, that moment, that spark of purpose coming into the life of Narnians, and then I think our lives too, that's what inspiration is.
Wow. Oh my goodness. We are nerding out on all my favorite things. I love Elizabeth Gilbert and her book, her TED Talk. I love Narnia. I mean, my goodness. Like, we're just going to have so much fun. And I love that very visual example of not just the connection of your purpose to how you named your company, how you named your children, and how that's related to the spark that you're trying to ignite in Roar, in your employees, in your family. That's really, really powerful and intentional, which is, I imagine, why you guys are so good at what you do as well. So thanks for sharing that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
We're going to shift gears slightly here. We're going to talk about peak performance. Obviously, there's some intersections between these things. Trey, how do you define peak performance today, and how did you arrive at this definition?
So, if I were going to point back to one of the things that I would say has helped me become a business owner in the way that I've been able to luckily come into it, being a 3-year-old company that helps people take courageous directions with their brand, trying to reimagine what to imagine what like possibility could be, and to help them have the courage to obtain that possibility. The truth is peak performance to me is found in the tension between work and rest. And so for 5 years out of college, I worked in a church. For 10 other years, I worked in a school. And if there's two industries that are going to run you ragged, it is those two places. And the church, I learned really quickly the idea of like, what does it mean to to actually create a moment to say, I'm going to stop at 5 o'clock. I'm going to turn it off. On the weekends, I'm going to turn it off. Right. At the school, I learned a lot about rest, not necessarily in the sense of like good work-life harmony. I don't like calling it balance because I don't think there's this thing called balance there. But work-life harmony, it wasn't necessarily about time. It was about inner rest and finding and living out truly what's deeply you. And my journey of 10 years in education, really, that's what it was about, is how do I find what genuinely has made me me? What am I here to do in the world? And that's a different type of rest that I think is so critical, because I think sometimes creators we feel like posers sometimes, and because we don't actually truly find our deep identity. So peak performance to me is really finding your own self in your work, in your job, in your life. And a lot of that work is around trying to discover and understand what are the things that have made me me, and also what are the values I really want to stand for. And so peak performance, I mean, I love full focus journals. That was like a huge thing for me. Like, and I am a nut about like project management and all of that, and we can get nerdy on all of that. But really, if I had to say what is peak performance, it's living in the way in which you are intended to be. And I am lucky. I'm 39 years old. I think I've found that, which has been really, really incredible. Kind of scary though, for someone who's also extremely driven to be like, at 39, have I arrived? But you know what? This is what arriving looks like. Let's go. I love
it. Yeah, so let's go for sure. And I love what you shared about how creators feel like posers when it's not purpose aligned, and that the true rest lies in walking the talk of your purpose and your identity and not wearing masks. So it's interesting because recently I'm 40, and I would say that I am super fortunate, and I've been living this for the last 6 years. So I found that younger, but I find new layers to the onion to unpeel and unravel further as you continue this growth journey. So one, I'd say you have not arrived. Nobody's ever arrived. And when we say that, life smacks us in the face. So I can't wait to hear what you learn next, Trey.
Well, okay. So like a little on that. Because, I'm a big proponent of therapy. I've been seeing the same like counselor for 15 years, which is awesome. It's totally different when you've been with someone for that long.
Yeah.
They know your journey. They know what you've gone through. And something that I've talked about with him is like, I've always wanted to be somewhere. Always wanted to be somewhere. In other words, like I had goals, I had plans, I had all of this like that. That was always what it is. And when I got into year 2.5, I was like, gosh, I feel like I don't need to be bigger. I think this is right size for me. This feels right. I love my clients. I love my work. I love the people I work with. So what's next? What do I do? And he goes, what if really your goal is about being present?
Right.
Because he said this is like, if you're always trying to get there, you'll never actually get there, because there is always a goalpost that's moving. But if you decide that you're there, you actually really get to be here. And so many people don't have that opportunity to truly be here. And so that's something that I'm really like preaching to my heart of like, listen, you are here and it is okay to be here. And so, some of that is quelling some of the things that I think that for so long, my nervous system has always been like, go, 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 go. What's next? What's around the corner? Let's get prepared for this. And instead of just saying, look, just be you.
Yeah.
Be your best.
No, I agree. I would say I'm definitely in the same season right now of truly being even more and more present. And what I mean by not having fully arrived is not like going after the next thing. It's enjoying the fruits of your labor, being present, really celebrating all of the small and big things in your life, and then showing up as the best version of you. But what I meant was more so I learned new layers of being present every day and every season. Yeah. And I learned new layers of who I am in new ways. For example, I just did a photo shoot, and I found myself getting anxious about this photo shoot because of the investment and the importance of it. And when I was talking with close advisors and my mom as well about like preparation and my anxiety, part of it was the outfits I was going to wear, and if I was going to practice makeup. And my mom said, Holly, if you're going for authenticity, why are you wearing makeup? You never wear makeup except if you're on stage. And I was like, well, damn, Yoda. That's what I call her when she's dropping these like bombs of wisdom. I'm like, well, yeah, you're right. So I started doing the first part of the photo shoot, and I decided, I'm going to do like maybe 10% of the photos with makeup. As we were doing the photo shoot, I was like, I'm not wearing makeup at all. Like, I want to just, I've already arrived. I already have the vibe. I already have the messaging. I am attracting my perfect clients. So why not lean more into who I am and just be Holly Jean exactly as she is, and stop trying to go back to the corporate, quite frankly, bullshit, and just be you. And so that's what I mean.
So let me ask you about that. Okay. Yeah. Because this is another, I think, interesting tangent in the creative world. Imposter syndrome. What are your thoughts on imposter syndrome? Because I think that's some of the things that we're dancing around and working through there.
Yeah. I mean, imposter syndrome, the longer I've been in the business, bothers me less and less. It still comes up, and I like to kind of characterize it like a little inside out character on my shoulder that's tiny and annoying. And when it comes up, I'm like, hey, what's this about? And like tell it to go away. But I think the reason so many of our clients, probably yours as well, struggle with this is social media and the news. We're constantly comparing ourselves to this new perfect norm or this new perfect, influencer. And when we do that, every time we compare, we can either look at that as information for growth in the direction we want to go, or we can despair, and most people despair. And it happens even to the best of us who've worked with this for decades and years. It still comes up because it's just such a prominent part of our life. So
yeah, that comparative side of imposter syndrome is definitely interesting. I think that there's another part of feeling like you're never good enough. And so for me, when I think about imposter syndrome, it's less about comparing. I'm not a very like competitive person. My wife loves to play games and that sort of thing. And I'm like, I'm just here for the conversation and the snacks in the middle of the table. That's what I'm here for. She's like, why you gotta compete? And I was like, I don't really necessarily need to compete. I don't need to win. I just need to be here and hang with people. But the thing is I think where I've struggled the most is, gosh, how in the world am I successful? I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. And like, sometimes I get into these conversations with our clients and I'm like, you're like, have you ever seen The West Wing?
yeah.
Right. So one of those first episodes, Charlie says something to the president and the president rewrites a speech and includes that line into it. And you're like, ooh, oh my gosh. Like, that happens all the time in our work, right? Where we get to include things into other people's messaging, identities, or whatever. And that bothered me for a long time because I was like, who am I to be able to do that? But I'm starting to realize that imposter syndrome in that sense is such an important thing for us to lean into.
Mm-hmm.
Because the moment that we feel like we've got it all solved, I think that's the scariest moment as a creative, because I think we start to miss those moments of inspiration. Mm-hmm. We start to think that we control that wind, right? Versus understanding that it is our job to show up, it is our job to be present and to grab out of that wind whatever we can find to pull together in order to see our clients made successful. And it's not necessarily about us being the expert. It's about us being present with our clients in those moments. And so I don't know. It's just it's something else that's been on my brain.
I 100% agree, because when you learn to work with imposter syndrome instead of feeling like it's an enemy, and you work with the creativity of working with imposter syndrome, it allows you to be vulnerable and authentic and show your client you're not perfect, because clients don't want to work with people that are perfect. They want to work with people who are imperfect, understand their imperfection, understand where they're at, and have like a few steps ahead of them on the journey of success and can help them lay that map out, right? That's what they want. They don't want somebody like, the big corporate conglomerates, their perfection and their ads, because that's intimidating, which is why as I went through this photo shoot, I'm like, wait a second. What your clients need is just authentically you, unfiltered, unscripted, not wearing makeup, not looking perfect, just being yourself. And we know this works. And so 100%, you can't be present with somebody if you're trying to show up as old versions of perfectionism, which doesn't exist. But anyways, we could go on a whole tangent here, and we're going to get back on track a little bit here. So
that's not very easy with me. So let's go.
So outside of the imposter syndrome challenge, what are some of the other challenges that you faced along your road to peak performance?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the things that I feel like that I've struggled with is being able to put together the right processes for me. And finding the right space to do the work. I mentioned like full focus, for example. That's been a huge. It's a journaling methodology and also journaled by the Michael Hyatt company. Well, actually, it's called Full Focus now, but it used to be by Michael Hyatt, and now his daughter Megan is in charge of it. But I was always a planner, but I never really had a good system to help me actually plan. And this one in particular, you walk through how to plan your week. You then go through the process of planning out your day, but you also do quarterly kind of like goal setting and annual goal setting, which was very helpful for me in the very beginning to find that type of process. I don't think I could have done that myself. And so I think that has been really important. The other thing around peak performance, I think, has been hard for me to kind of like pull my head around is I didn't go to school for business. I have a history degree and I have a seminary degree in transformational leadership. I had no idea how to run a business. You know what I mean? Like, and so for me, one of the biggest journeys was learning things like profitability and what that even means, which I think a lot of creatives, like at the size of company that I am. So we're right at 7 independent contractors that work with me. Like the truth is like, I think a lot of companies our size don't necessarily think about some of these bigger things that bigger agencies think about in order to be better for their customers. And so that's something else that over along my journey I've really had to think about to get us to peak performance. Like it really took us 2.5 years to get to a place that's like, okay, we're actually going to price our we're actually going to have a real methodology to price our projects. And in doing so, it's like, wow, okay, if we're actually going to be profitable by calculations, it means that we're we're actually going to have to like raise our rates to a point that I don't know, are people actually going to buy that? I mean, surprisingly, not really should be, but they do, right? But that's another thing that's really, I think I struggled with in the beginning because I undervalued our work by a lot and left a lot of money on the table at that point in time. But we've gotten to this point now to where I think we have a good idea of what that peak performance for our company might look like.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's interesting because a lot of the clients I work with, they're brilliant at what they do. A lot of them are, healers, creators, speakers, authors. They're brilliant at what they do, but they did not also go to school for business. And so it's, how do we do this? It's funny when you brought up your background, including seminary background. I was having coffee with a friend this past weekend, and he asked me, "What do you do?" And I asked me to explain what I do as a revenue performance consultant. And I explained it. And he said, "So basically you prophesize." And I
Oh,
was
wow.
like, and he said, "You prophesize to profitize." And I was like, "Well, damn,
Wow.
that's a great marketing gimmick. Like, that's exactly what I do." So that kind of came up for me
That's
when you
really
were
funny. That's
sharing the
funny.
seminary piece.
Yeah, it's great.
But that's what we do. We work with our clients and help them prophesize or create that strategy to market themselves, brand themselves, step really into who they are and their purpose, and do it in a way that intentionally helps them connect to
That's good.
create that profit. So I love that. And you've already kind of answered one of the questions we'll talk about later, so we'll come back to that. But how have you taken these lessons and these nuggets of wisdom in your company to create a culture of peak performance for your employees?
Yeah. So, couple of ways that we've done that. One is I'm a post COVID company, which means I've never met any of my team members in person. We all started on Zoom and we've all been on Zoom together. And so that brought about some interesting challenges in the beginning, right? Of like, how do you create a culture on Zoom? And so immediately it made me think about how do you create good and effective teams? Well, you do that by experiences together. And so we haven't been able to meet in person yet. I'll get to that in a second. But one of the things I did very early on was for some of our core team, we started a profit sharing experience. And that profit sharing experience has been really great for them because they feel bought in. Another thing that I learned from Eli Altman's book, Run Agency Run, and that we just started was allow for team members to actually choose projects to work on internally that are quarterly projects that they feel like could better benefit the business, and pay them for that, right? Like let them roll with that. And so we have one of our team members is redesigning a website. One of our team members is taking one of our things that we built for another client and turning it into a product. Another one is like, we need to update some of our case studies. And I'm like, awesome, go do those things, And so giving them that agency. But then lastly is I have a really close friend that I went to college with, and he has an agency called Kalon Creative, and they actually started very similar to us, where they only had 2 people stateside, but they actually had almost their whole office is mostly people from Croatia. And after about 10 years of doing business, they were like, it's time for us to have a retreat. And they said they were only going to do this once every 5 years. And so they met in Portugal. I was like, oh man, Portugal.
Sounds awful.
Right, sounds awful. But they met in Portugal because it was the cheapest place to get everybody in one place. And they said how invaluable it was to meet like that. And I should have thought about that, because like there's something in school culture that's like schools that meet together thrive together. That's something really important. And so we're actually going to be doing a retreat here in 2 months, where I'm flying our some of our crew in, our core team in, to do a retreat. And what are we going to do? We're going to have fun. That's what we're going to do. We're probably going to do some sort of like cultural type thing, but mostly like we're going to have fun getting to know each other in person. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, honestly, to grow together does create, you need to create those bonds and those connections. And what's really cool, I will say, is a lot of my company is also based online, and a lot of my clients are based online. But when I get the opportunity to meet my clients, my people in person, it is so different. It's so much more connected than we cannot replace actual human connection in person. Like it's just not replaceable. And that's why cultures that thrive even better are the ones that make intentional space to have fun, to have connection, to have those conversations beyond just what happens between the work walls. Amazing. So I do want to shift to, my area of expertise, money, show me the money section of the show. You already kind of spoke to this a little bit earlier, but can you share an example or two of when you've left money on the table and what you did to fix it?
Yeah. So, I'm going to be honest, Holly, like there's been very few times where we've actually left money on the table. And that's, and the main reason why is because I had so much anxiety about money going into my business that like I was trying to do whatever it took to make sure that I am like profitable and being able to like pay myself, right? And so in the very beginning, I didn't know how to price, had no clue, zero clue. I mean, and on top of that, I never wanted to be an hourly company. Being paid hourly is stupid, because if I'm one of my spidey strengths that I call them, maybe this is a secret sauce, is we are stupid fast. Because I worked in church world and I worked in schools, you have to be fast. That's just how it works. At the school I worked at, we would do over 500 marketing projects a year, and it's a lot. And so for me, what I ended up doing is I made a decision, because I was like, I just don't even know how to price myself. So I created a ritual. Every time that I sent a proposal to a client, I would put it in an email, and then I would delete it, and I'd go back to the main file, and I would raise the price by $1,000. And I would do this every single proposal until people started telling me no. And I was like, okay, now I know where the floor was, right? And that was super helpful. Now, here's another place that I know we left money on the table for sure. And I learned this from Blair Enns' book on pricing for creativity, which is a $200 book. And you're like, $200 for a book? I'm like, yeah, it's made me over $350,000. So yes, you should pay $200 for this book. Thank you, Blair Enns. But the biggest thing for me, it was this. It was, I used to send proposals, one option. But the thing is that like, if I were to hold up this coffee cup, right, and say, is this a small, medium, or large, right? You could probably guess that maybe it's a small, right? Maybe it's a medium. But if I had this next to it, immediately this becomes a medium, right? Perk. I love their stuff. I shouldn't say that because I'm also a co-owner of a coffee company. I love Oppo coffee. Anyways. product placement. But the thing is that I realized from this book, and then he told me, he uses an example of a stick and how can you measure the length, is that not giving your clients options is crazy. And you leave so much money on the table because options allow you to create your value. And I'm not just talking about options in the sense of like, oh, you can get this and then you can add on this and then you can add on this. No. I'm talking about increasing options with value because you want to desire the client to move up to that higher value. Because you know that you're the expert. You know what is going to be most valuable to them. And so it's not just about like having more deliverables between three options. It's about showcasing that value. And so one of the ways that we do that is that our top option almost all the time is you may want a website. Okay, great. You may want a logo. Okay, great. What are you going to do with those things? If you don't have someone internally to actually make those things, you probably also don't have someone internally to tell you how to leverage them. And so often our top option is just that, is us coming on as a fractional marketing team or a fractional chief marketing officer in order to help implement the things that we create together over 6 to 12 months so that we can actually like create strategy together with the things that you're making.
Yeah. No, these are two really important points. The number one thing that early business owners, I believe, struggle with is the pricing thing. And they make that mistake, like you said, of the hourly. And anytime I get on a call with a new client or just even somebody I meet and, networking, I'm like, you're making such a huge mistake. You're not thinking back to the overhead, the team you're supporting, the years and decades of research and experience you're bringing to the table. That's what you're pricing. You're not pricing this. You're pricing the fact that you can help them overcome this particular pain point in this time frame. And what's the value? What's their willingness to pay on that? That's what we're pricing. And then the other important point that you made was around those options and how you frame that and building out that value to your client. The better you're able to meet them where they're at, the more likely you're going to bring on clients. And having that product pyramid, that's what I call it, because you've got your low hanging fruit that's cheaper to start building trust and overcome a problem. And then you have like that sweet spot, like you said, that's the fractional CMO work for your organization and knowing what that sweet spot is. And then even having those upsells so that you understand your client journey and keep your client for life versus spending countless monetized dollars in marketing.
Can I speak to that real quick?
Yeah.
I think this is really important too. I've quit looking at our success rate around like the win of a client. You're gonna have to help me with the revenue thing. Basically, like the cost of a project, the win of a project, whatever that cost that we end up pricing it at, right? I've started moving from that like average engagement fee to looking at CLV, customer lifetime value, because that is a whole nother game changer. Because if you compare those two things, it is vastly different.
Right.
And you start to steward the relationship a lot differently. And I'm not saying like you ever discount things, but like, in some scenarios, it just makes sense to do good for your customer without even asking for payment. And why? Because your goal is to grow that CLV, not the $250 that you're going to send out an invoice because it took you whatever. It's like you got a minimum engagement fee for an hour. Blah, blah, blah. Like sometimes it's just to do right, because that right actually is way more valuable than that 2 hours of billing, because the CLV keeps going.
Yeah, no, that's super important. And yeah, I think people get so caught up on cost to acquire and those lead gen strategies that they forget about nurturing their existing client base. And that's where a lot of business owners fail, even when they're really mature business owners.
That's right.
What is the next shiny object that you're trying to monetize into a new revenue stream?
The next shiny object. So for me, it's really it's passive income I think is a little bit of a lie, because if it's truly passive, like I don't know how you're actually making money. It is something that like I would like. I mean, anyone would say, yeah, I'd love some passive income. You know what I mean? Um, but for me, it's honestly, I have this phrase that you monetize what you operationalize, right? And so if there's a shiny object that I could go after, it would be helping coach other agencies that want to remain small. One of the things I think is big in our industry right now is, oh, we got to grow to 1 million AAR, or ARR, and that's the goal, is like, you want to be a multi-million-dollar company and you want to have a office, and which I'm like, I never want that. And I think that sometimes we get discounted because that's not my desire. Someone asked me at the very beginning, agents, do you want to be an agency of scale or an agency of lifestyle? That was a really important thing to ask me early on, because you create different success scenarios. And for me, it was an agency of lifestyle. That's what I wanted. But how many of the Insta influencers that are out there, or, the creative, like, come and join my, my class in order to only make $350,000 a year in revenue? There's not many people out there that are posting that type of class, because everyone's like, $1 million sounds a lot better. Well, yeah, it sounds a lot better. But as Biggie Small says, mo money, mo problems. And so, like, for me, I think that that's one of the big things that I would love to possibly get into one day, is helping coach what does it look like to truly have a small agency and to be comfortable in that small agency, and to not necessarily have to, you don't have to grow to $1 million in annual revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are other really important growth strategies, and I would even challenge you, versus agency of scale or lifestyle, I would say you're an agency of purpose.
Oh yeah, let's go. I like that.
Right? And so it's helping you with these other agencies. So I would say, like, your market would be very niche in terms of helping those agencies of purpose stay purpose aligned versus just the revenue, because people just so get obsessed chasing the revenue, because we live in a capitalistic market. So I'm really excited to see what you do with that. And then I wanted to also circle back to passive income is a lie. Maybe to some degree, but I actually have created a good deal of passive income through partnerships that are very passive. I'm literally
what I mean by that, is, do you still work hard to get that passive income?
No, they're simple, seriously, very simple introductions.
All right, then maybe you can change my mind, Holly.
Yeah, we'll have to do a separate call on that.
I don't know, because I just, like, I don't know if I have time to think about passive income. So
you don't have time not to think about it. So
we'll
chat separately on that. I've helped a lot of clients create passive income, and there are very easy opportunities for that. So we'll take that offline. Challenge accepted. All right, we're going to do a wrap up with 2 rapid fire questions.
Sure.
What's the best piece of advice you would share with others today?
Yeah. Have your company do good instead of just make money.
Absolutely. And what's the legacy you wish to leave behind?
I want my company to, so one of the things we do is we help adopt children with Down syndrome from international countries. And so I want to see kids with Down syndrome who don't have parents or families. I want to see them have families, and I hope that our company could be a part of that. We already are doing that, but I'd love to get to the end of whatever this journey is, and to say, I helped families reconnect with their forever family. So
I love that. That's beautiful. Do good and building forever families for children around the world. Amazing. Thank you so much, Trey, for making the time in your busy schedule to share with the listeners your lessons. And it's been really valuable, even the tangents we've gone on. So thank you so much. For our listeners, if you want to work with Trey, you want to learn more about Trey, I will have all of his social media links and his website links in the show notes, as well as the YouTube notes. So be sure to connect with Trey and help him do good and help him bring more connections for these forever families. Thank you so much.
Stay awesome, y'all.
All right. To our listeners, I'll see you on our next episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining the show today. I hope you were inspired. More importantly, I hope you take action. If the show inspired you, I ask that you subscribe and share it with your network. Let's spread inspiration together today.